Aloha and welcome back to another episode of Grounding Ascension. This is the series on Lemuria, and I have a beautiful Lemurian priestess with me today. Her name is Rakai'el Webb, and she is internationally known. Not only is she a Lemurian priestess, she is an astrologer, an online course creator, a sound healer, and the founder of the Lemurian School of Remembering, which is absolutely amazing. She's really passionate about empowering her students to remember their past lives and utilize this wisdom to create innovative solutions during this potent time of transformation as we all work together to heal our planet. Rakai'el is a certified heart math mentor, clairsentient astrologer, business coach. She has a master's in traditional Chinese medicine, and she's just overall amazing. So welcome, Rakai'el. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you so much, Celeste. I'm so happy to be here today. And thank you so much to everyone who is listening. We are so honored to share this conversation with you today. Thank you.
Yes. So I want to go straight into it, and I want to ask you, how did Lemuria wake up inside of you? Because that to me was one of the biggest hurdles to just, first of all, realize, oh, this is Lemuria that's happening inside of me. So, how was that process for you?
Well, well, I think it's different for everyone. And um I think when I was a child, I was tuned into Lemurian frequencies, but I didn't know what they were. I didn't know that that was what it was. But now that I'm attuned to the frequencies of Lemuria, like I can go back into my childhood and recognize that. Um, and truly, it's just a sense of connection with the earth and um, and a belief in magic. It was like we didn't spend a lot of time, my brother and we didn't spend a lot of time watching TV. We lived on an acre in southwestern Kentucky, and our we lived in a subdivision, but our house backed up to a wood, a woods, and to a field. And so this was our magical playground. We had like Stickerbush Kingdom, and there were two fallen logs that were the battleships. And my mom was an art teacher, and she was always talking to me about the fairies that lived in the forest and the gardens. And my dad was really into Native American spirituality, and so there was just this real sense of reverence and connection with the land. Um, so, really like reaching back, like it feels like that there's an essence of the Lemurian frequency that was from then. And then in my, more adult life, I knew more about Atlantis. Um, because I feel like I studied marine biology. I mean, I was a swimmer and a lifeguard and, around water all the time. And uh and it, and so it was knowing about like, so I did the marine biology was in the Bahamas, and so that's more like Bermuda Triangle, like Atlantis kind of energy. So I knew about that. But then I think it was really like I started learning about Lemuria specifically. I was in a period of time where I was having a huge awakening and many different things were happening. And um, one of my friends was giving me a lot of different material to go through and to learn from, and we would have conversations about it. And so one of that was like the spirit science videos that talk about Lemuria. And then since then, I've like, wow, expanded so much because that's like, so this is what I talk about. So Lemuria was such a vast continent, and then from there it was also like a consciousness, so there's like Lemurian energy. It's not just in what we know of as Hawaii now. It's Aboriginal in Australia and Rapa Nui and Sri Lanka, and there's into the Incan culture in South America. And so there's this Lemurian consciousness consciousness that's so big and so vast. And so I feel like that even those spirit science videos, they're super great and really activating for so many people, and it's also just like a version of that. So there's even now, it's like there's parts of that that I still resonate with, and that I'm like, expanded to hold much more than that. And I think also too, it's really always like people are like, what is Lemurian consciousness and what is Lemuria? Like our linear third dimensional mind wants to like pin it down, like as if it's like a taxidermy butterfly. We need to pin down the wings and stuff. And it's like, well, so I was like trying to catch a bubble, you know? Um, but so for me, really, it was a process from that time on or around about 2013. And then it was, again, it kind of coordinates with corresponds to my calling to come to Hawaii. And so it was, I was in San Francisco minding my business and having my acupuncture practice. And, it's like I said, I did marine biology in the Bahamas. So if I was going to do like tropical situation, I would have gone back there. But it was really like all of this information started coming in about Hawaii, and I was like, what? And so much to the point that I was just like, wow, I really better do something, or I'm gonna get a concussion from a guidebook knocking off the shelf. It's like, um, so I ended up kind of shortening the story here. I ended up going to the Big Island, and it was like this spiritual mission. Like I actually took Lemurian crystals with me, and my partner, it was my ex-partner. We'd been separated for several years, but he used to live there, so we traveled there together. And he was really just like, wherever your intuition tells you to go, we'll go there. And so we did this whole like gridding with the crystals, going to different sacred sites and things. And then I came back, and I was like, cool, done. I did my spiritual mission. I did what they asked me to do. I'm going to go back to my stuff here, like, spiritual check. And I was like, okay, cool. But then it was like about probably like 2 months later, 3 months later, the signs started coming back. And I was like, what do you guys want? Like, I was just there. And then it became more apparent that it was not for another visit. It was like I was going to move there. And so all of that time, it was, this like, Lemuria was still swirling in the field as really like the Aina, came more into my dreams. It was like I had dreams about her. Like she came to me as a woman in my dreams. And I was dreaming of this land with red dirt and waterfalls. And the only red dirt that I knew of was in Georgia. So I was like, what? When I was like, I didn't really, 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 really know that. Because even on Maui, there's red dirt, but it's not like Hawaii, you know? And so it wasn't as prominent here. So it wasn't until I went to Kauai and like saw literally the red dirt waterfall that is there. And I was like, oh my God, that is from my dreams. Um, so, but that's a little bit fast forward. So then I was here, I moved here, and I was working with Kaya Ra. So she wrote the Sophia Code. And so I was having sessions with her, and she was like, have you start working with the kahuna yet? And, I said, no, not yet. And so she gave me the name of this woman, Auntie Calais. And I was like, oh, how do you spell that? Like, I was like literally alone on the beach, like, Auntie Calais, like, and so then she sent me her website, and I was like, oh, okay, like that. And so we had a session. We ended up having several sessions, and but in the first session, I was like, I've been called to come to this land, and I'm, ready, She's like, what do I do? And so she was like, you're a Lemurian priestess. And we were on Skype. And so she looks at me and, she's like, you're a Lemurian priestess. You've been called to this land. You haven't been able to come back here for tens of thousands of years. but you are able to come back in this lifetime, and you are able to come back here now because it's now time for you to retrieve your memories that you left for yourself in the stones, in the land. And so you have to walk barefoot and, look for these pieces and parts of yourself. And so, yeah, it was, and so many things happened from then, but that's this short part of the story.
That is amazing. And I love that. I think, like many of us, when Lemuria calls or when the Aina calls, it is it's real. It's, what is that word? It won't give up on us, right? It's like, I have a message for you, and until you are grounded in my land, I'm not going to stop, right? And I think your courage to show up for that, because having to move, we experienced that this year. Like, for so many years, I felt the call, and it was like, no, that's, a move is just too big, right? So being able to answer the call and show up to the land, right? And then, like your auntie said, being able to anchor in and allow ourselves to retrieve the memories that we have left behind it's life changing.
Yeah, and I also think it's like it's not required. Like a lot of people feel like they have to move here to be able to access that, and it's just not true. Like, for some people you do, but for so especially now that there's been so many layers of Lemurian disclosure that have happened, since even I moved here. I moved here in 2016. And so, in 2018, we had the eruption of the volcano on the Big Island. And so, I was talking with Keone Hanalei, who is Pohala Hawaiian Botanicals on Instagram, and he is an incredible medicine keeper. And his lineage goes back pre-Polynesian. He's Hawaiian, and so his lineage goes back pre-Polynesian. So his family is Lemurian, and so we were talking about it was the plume of ash that went up 30,000 feet. And I was like, that's Pohaku, that's the sacred stone that is now this dust from this land is now on the wind, landing on the cars in LA, like landing on, if you have your window open, landing on the desk of, people in Florida. It's like it's a global disclosure of this information. And then when the volcano erupted, and I remember we were all watching, like, the lava flow and everything, and when the lava flow finally met the ocean, I remember I was in Kauai, and I still get chills talking about it, but it was just like the day the lava met the ocean, it was like this these Lemurian codes that had been kept out of the water matrix, because when you talk about the water matrix is everywhere. It's not just in the water that's in your glass. It's in the air that you're breathing right now. It's in the water that comes out of your shower. It's all around us, and this water has been here from the beginning of time. And so there's these codes and information that you can tap into when you access the water matrix. And if there was information that you wanted to keep out of the water matrix, unless there's some like physiology of molten lava that I don't understand, and somehow there is water inside of there. There's, because even when rain touches stone, like there's like, so Mount Shasta, all of that information is like encoding into the water matrix. But if there's information that you did not want to touch water, then it would be, as far as I know, I could be wrong, in molten lava. And so then when that lava met the ocean, it was this full disclosure of all of his Lemurian codes that went into the complete and entire water matrix. So, and then they were also talking about, there was olivine, the green stones that was coming out of the volcano as it was erupting, and I was like, emerald tablets, anyone? Like, like the emerald tablets of Thoth the Atlantean are now being released into the water matrix. So, so just all of this to say that it's like, you don't have to move. You don't have to come here. You don't even have to visit here. That it's like you just have to talk to the earth, and you just have to be in communion with water, because there's so much information that like is available to you just from consciously and intentionally working with water. Your feet never have to come onto this land if that's not possible for you.
Yeah, that's very true. Very, very true. And I think that's also why, at least in my line of work, I'm seeing a lot of people from all over the world awaken to Lemuria, right? People that perhaps they don't even have a connection to Hawaii, right? So they're not even called by Hawaii. They're just like, what is this Lemuria stuff, right? So yeah, we are definitely all interconnected, and the codes are being spread. And from what I understand, the Lemurian crystalline grids have been activated within the last year, at a higher level. So I love this. And this goes into the kind of work that you do, which is helping people remember and activate their wisdom and their memories, right? And bring that to life. So can you speak a little bit about how you started on that journey? Like what allowed you or inspired you to say, you know what? I feel like I'm ready to help others, remember like I did.
Yeah, yeah. So it was about 2 years after, I guess it actually started about a year after I came here, because I arrived here in April of 2016. and I think it was also really working with sound. It was like, and I had all the stories, connect, but um I had this really kind of like death and rebirth, and I talk about it like that, where it was like, where it was like, there was a part of me that died in the fall of 2017. um so that was a time when, um I was working with Kaya and also working with Auntie Kalei, and Kaya had said that I was a water priestess to work with the water, and then Kahuna Kalei said that I was a Lemurian priestess and to really work with the land, with the stones, and all of this was really like we're also working with my voice, and so I've been dancing since I was 3, but like singing, no. I've never done karaoke, I was like, definitely not. My friends are like, we're going to, I'm like, no. Um, and so yeah, it was really like, and this is a different story, but it was really I had this activation in the ocean on the backside of Molokini, which is this crescent moon shaped island off of the shores of Maui. And so I had this activation in the water there, which then allowed me to have this breakthrough with my voice and to bring through the tones that I share now. And really, it was from sharing those tones that then sound healing came into my life. Um, but I remember there was actually a man who came here, and he's been working on the grids for years with groups of people all over the world. And it was in 2017 when it was like the completion. And so there was a completion of that mission of the activating of the grids that happened. And so I was helping him with that. And then one night we were at dinner, and he was talking about numerology and gematria, really, which is like the Hebrew science of connecting a number with letter. Um, and so he was like, how do you understand God math? And I was like, what is God math? I understand what you're saying, but I don't know what that is. And so then he was like, he asked for my birthday, and he just on the back of the pizza container, did all of this like calculations. And then he was like, what happened in 2017? And I was like, oh no, it was 2016. What happened in 2016? And I was like that was one of the hardest years of my life. Oh yes, I moved here, but it was also like, wow, like as many people experience, moving here, there's a death, that struggle that happens, um, and a purging that happens. And so I was like, yeah, that was one of the hardest times of my life. And and he was like, that was the time when you actually completed your Earth assignment, but you weren't ready to go. So you renegotiated for a second one. And so he was like, there was a part of you that died because you completed that, but you weren't ready to leave. So then you signed on for a new mission. And so I believe that this dispensation of and supporting people to remember Lemuria was part of that. And so then that was simultaneously when I was like, well, I have these tones, but I don't know what they are. I'm not a singer. I'm not a musician. I had done sound healing, like I'd mentored with a shaman who was an incredible sound healer and wanted to be a sound healer, but it just didn't, I let go of that. So, but then there was a man who was here and he was a sound healer. And so I said, hey, maybe I can share these things with you, these tones, you can help me figure out what they are. And so he was like, I can't believe he just started doing that. And then, asked me to sing in his sound bath, then ended up asking me to partner with him to co-facilitate the sound journeys. So I think a lot of it was also the energetic attunement of working with sound that also allowed for this. It's all so connected, for this Lemurian consciousness to really come forward, not only as my own personal practice, but as, okay, I've been steeped in this for so long that now I feel prepared to offer this experience for other people. Um, so simultaneously, I was 36 in 2017, and at that time, my astrologer was like, you just had your Jupiter return, and now it's Jupiter's retrograde. So there's something that you experienced during your Jupiter return that you need to go back to. There was an idea or something. And so I had this idea, this dream to do a retreat where we could work with the water, talk about astrology, do sound healing, swim with the dolphins, like all of these like, super Lemurian things. And simultaneously, I forgot this part, like around that time too, I also started free diving. So I think it was free diving, not only visiting the depths of the ocean, being attuned by the frequencies of the whales with the sound healing that also happened. And also, there's free diving just teaches you that your body is capable of way more than you think is possible. And and I mean, like I'd already had that experience when I healed from the autoimmune disease that I used to have in 2013, so I knew my body was a miracle. And this was another like, proof of that like, wow, I can totally hold my breath for 4.5 minutes. Like that's amazing. um, so it was all of these things that like they didn't make sense, it was like sound healing was happening like through the roof and my bank account was empty. But people were giving me crystal singing bowls. I was going on these epic photo shoots. Like my life did not correspond to a person who was overdrawn their bank account. Like I was just like, this, I can't even pay attention to what is happening in that 3D world because like this, I don't know how it's happening, but this is what's happening. Um, and so it was all of these things, sound healing, free diving, astrology was coming back into my world. All of these things, these pieces that didn't make sense until I put the word Lemuria with them. And then it was like, oh, that is what all of these things are. And so but I didn't feel ready to do this retreat. That just seemed like way too big of a step for me at that time. But, I've been doing online classes. So I was like, oh, I could do that. So then I designed a curriculum that was to help people to just be in the frequency of that this remembrance is possible, and to be with other people who also say that this is possible for them, and then to have fun doing it. We do like, we do Lemurian water alchemy, through working with flower essences, crystal essences. We go into astrology, we go into color, we work with sound, all these different things. Um, but really, it's just to be in the field of potential, like to be in that possibility and to hold the door open for yourself with other people that allows that remembrance to come through. So I designed this whole curriculum, but then it was way too long. Like, it was way too many things to be something that was digestible for people. So I was like, okay, so it's 1 level, 2 levels, 3 levels. There was actually a 4th level, but then that actually didn't end up coming to fruition. But um so so that was how it all started, was that there was this online remembering Lemuria, um and then it was Rising Lemuria, and then Lemurian Leadership. And then we actually had our first retreat, which was the manifestation of that first vision. We had that here on Maui, in September of 2019. And so that's the vision, is to continue doing that, as soon as we're able to do that. Um, so, and everyone who attends the retreat has to have gone through that first level of remembering Lemuria. And it really is, I know there's many people who have Lemurian memories and have even built businesses based on their memories of Lemuria, but it really is just to have everybody have a common language and experiences, and everybody be speaking the same language, so that we can, because we do lots of things that we've done online, we do in person together. And so when everyone speaks the same language, we can go farther than if we were trying to like get everybody up to speed all at the same time. So yeah.
Amazing. I feel like I could ask you an hour full of questions from that explanation, but I want to talk about, let's see. Well, I love that you had the vision and it actually took you going through all of these processes and showing up for the work and trusting, and through time, your vision came true. It's so inspiring. It's so inspiring to me. And also for me, I really relate, because since landing here, I do feel a little bit like quantum living. It's like there's all these things happening, and the only thread that connects them is really Lemuria, because to the logical mind, it's not connected, right? So I love that process and how that has happened. Again, really inspiring. Um, and I also love that you shared about the death and the rebirth. And I think I'd like for you to talk about that just a little bit, because I know a lot of listeners are experiencing right now huge awakenings, especially, through this year. And a part of that awakening is obviously the death and rebirth process, which is so, so difficult, right? And when you're in it, it's like, I don't know where this is leading me. And I actually had the same thing happen right before moving to Hawaii, and still felt the remnants of it as I landed here. But I guess while you were in that, did you already connect to Lemuria, or what was the driving force to get you through that?
No, so no. I'd like, of course, like Lemuria was in my field because it was, something that I had learned at some point or felt at some point, but it wasn't an energy that I was actively dealing with at that, or interfacing with at that time. Um, so so no, it wasn't that, but it was just like, so really it was like, I mean, it was so many things that were just compounding the death, It was, it was Standing Rock happening. And prior to that, that was the summer of 2016, was also like a whole surge in the Black Lives Matter movement. That was when uh Alton Sterling and um, Philandro Castile were murdered. And that was the first time that I spoke about Black Lives Matter on my Instagram and was politically active. And that was scary for me at that time. Um, and then Standing Rock happened, and it was like, like when I was growing up, in middle school, my dad, we lived in Kentucky, and this it's Cherokee land, and our town, uh, Paducah, is named after Chief Paducah. And so there's this very strong Native American culture there, and lots of also white supremacy, and um, and but like my dad was brain tanning deer hides in our backyard. He was like going with my brother out into the farm fields to look for arrowheads, and then they would like make cordage, which is the rope that ties the arrowheads on from the deer. And so uh and like when I was 15 or 16, we went to the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation and stayed out there for that summer while my parents both did Vision Quest with the medicine man there. And so it really felt like what was happening at Standing Rock was way more close to home. And so I was very moved to participate. And it was like, being a white person, I didn't really know like the best way to do that. And so it was, I posted a photo of, I actually like researched like what was indigenous traditional face paint so that I didn't do that. And I wanted it to be more of this like, galactic family. And so, but I did have, I used the tribal markers and I had face paint on my face, and I had made a feather fan, and I took a picture with water to be supporting the water protectors. And at first the response was really great, but then a lot of people responded about like cultural appropriation. And now I know about white fragility. And so I had the full on like white fragility experience where I was like just completely like silenced. And I was just like, wow, okay. So being attacked online was part of that, like this, and it was just trauma in the field of what was happening at Standing Rock. And then my boyfriend slept with someone else, and I was like, that's it, we're done. And then President Trump got elected, and it was just like, and then like I was leading this group with 12 women, and one of them went to Standing Rock, and there was just like so much. And honestly, it was like I really had this vision of having 12 women in this program, and I should have done an application process, because some of the women were not, they were all at different levels, and so I couldn't actually deliver the level of experience that I had said that they would, because some of them weren't there yet. And so then some of them were like, I'm leaving, I'm quitting, like, and it was just like one by one, they were all like falling away. And it was just like, God, like everything else that was happening. And yeah, it was just a fall. And through that, like there were moments where it was like, and now, what I talked about in Cosmic Course Creation about how to hold the space for a group, it's like now I have really strict boundaries for what is appropriate in a group and what is not. And I will delete whatever comments are not appropriate. These things, if you have these issues, you talk to me about them. They're not for the group. Um, and so I didn't have those boundaries because I didn't know. And so, one woman just like, shared her whole grievances with me and with the program and everything in the group. And it just ripped this hole in the group. And And so then it was just like, it was just messy, 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 messy. And so, so there were totally moments where it was like, I was just shaking in my room. Like, I called my astrologer and she was like, sometimes it's not the astrology, it's just your experience. And I was like, you're not supposed to say that. Um, and so yeah, it seemed like everywhere I asked for help, it was not available. And so it was just like I just had to be in it. And it fucking sucked. And so it was just like, but I also had this sense that it was like the river of my life had been going in one direction, and that every perceived failure was my angels throwing a log from the sky, like onto the river of my life. But I knew somehow through it all that they were building a dam to redirect the river of my life in another way that didn't make it less painful, but I did know that it was happening for my good. I did know that there was this like massive redirection that was happening, and I did trust that. But that doesn't, there's when you're in that much, when you're in, I'm like, I don't know how much I can swear, but it's like when you're in that much gunk and drama and mud, it's just like, it's when you're in that much of it, you really can't spiritually bypass. It's like when it's in your face like that, like you just have to be in it, and know that it's like, okay, like I can't positively think myself out of this. It's like I do know that like that there is a bigger story. I do know that I am here on a mission, that there is a bigger purpose for me, and that somehow, as terrible as all of this seems right now, it is part of getting me onto the right track.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think a lot of times when we see somebody so anchored into their frequency, right? You're very strongly anchored into that beautiful Lemurian frequency. You don't realize that that person might have, in your case, definitely did go through an entire process, like what you explained, right? So I think that helps a lot of listeners, because when you're in that awakening and it's Lemuria is not even a part of it. It's just like, I don't want to be here. What is going on? But I love how you described it. Literally, the angels are throwing the logs and just redirecting the flow. And I think that's just perfect, right? And we have to follow that flow. Yeah. And I see that in the world stage now, right? There's so much chaos and there's just so much transformation. Literally, like now the logs are just falling everywhere all over the world and redirecting every individual's life. And how do you see the awakening, the activation of all of these Lemurian codes, and especially in your work where you deal with so many people awakening to their Lemurian wisdom and teachings and frequency? Do you see a correlation now? Perhaps do you have more people coming to you, especially this year, or just in general from what has happened in 2020 and awakening and activating our true frequency?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's been happening. It's not just this year. I feel like it really, 2018, 2019, like everyone is just more aware, like, it's kind of like, uh, I have certain people whose newsletters I get, and they used to share like astrological insights, and they're like, yeah, we're not going to do that anymore because like everybody's talking about it, so it really is, I mean, like, it's like, it's like having a new moon circle or a full moon circle. Having a new moon circle, it used to be like normal to have a full moon circle, but a new moon circle was like, well, what are you doing? And it depends on where you are too. um you know like I know my mom being where she is in Kentucky is like, a little bit more edgy to have a new moon or full moon circle, So, but I feel like we're all on this path of awakening and coming into more awareness. But um, I really do, I really do feel like that more people are going to see the value of doing something like, whether it's, remembering Lemuria or something else, but really doing the work to listen more deeply into ourselves, into ourselves and into ourselves, um, because there's so when it's like, when all because that was the distraction before, right? Was like, oh well, I don't have to, because I can just go somewhere and get a job and they'll take care of me and pay my health insurance, and I don't have to, think about it too much because I'm just going to show up and do what they say and then go home and then, you know, watch TV shows about Atlantis when I'm at home, or not, watch, whatever TV shows you're watching. But 2020 has showed us that, like jobs as we know them are not reliable. And that like there's like so many, I mean, as you know, it was like we did the Cosmic Course creation. I announced that, so people, I did that like it just came as a download where it's super fast, where it was like, okay, now we're all in stay-at-home orders, and I've been doing business on the internet for years now, and now people need to know how to do business on the internet, and they don't want to, there's a lot of people who teach it out there who teach it in a different way than I teach it because it's more almost like a corporatized version of entrepreneurship. Um, and so it was just like, okay, now it's time for me to tell you all, lift the curtain. How do I do what I do? And how do I do it in the way that I do it? And because it's like, you need to take responsibility. I feel like that's what having Saturn go through Capricorn for all of us as a collective is like, really, we have to take responsibility for our long-term success. That's all Saturn energy right there. And to not abdicate or defer our long-term security and success to be given to us by a corporation or another business, So there's so many entrepreneurs that have come out of this year. And yeah, we did Cosmic Course creation. I announced it at 8 p.m. Friday time, Hawaii time on a Friday, which is middle of the night in the rest of the world. And was like, we're doing this on Monday, and in 2 days 133 people signed up. It was just like, and we just shot the whole thing live for 5 hours to get together. But so I think it's really like a lot of people are really like, number one, recognizing that going to school, of course it's like, do your due diligence, do your homework and study with people and take classes and go to school and all that stuff. But it's like that there are also there's also wisdom. And so this is where it gets tricky, okay? Because like I have had so many incredible teachers, and so I spent 4.5 years in acupuncture school. And that was like really learning how to be a healer and be with people in uncomfortable situations. Um, and also like ethics, about like how to be with people in an ethical way. Um, and then I finished that in 2012, but really from 2005. So in the time of all of that, from 2005 through 2015, I was under direct mentorship of individual teachers outside of school. So it was like I mentored with an aromatherapy teacher, and I mentored with the shaman that I worked with. I had a business coach. Like, so I think what I'm saying now is that I don't want people to yes, you have untold wisdom within your cells and ancient past life memories where you were, that shaman and that priestess and that master healer and that astrologer and all of that, and that can come out and be incredible gifts and service that you share with the world. And I also do not want to um, recommend or advocate in any way that you just do that. It's very important to have, you can mentor with ascended master teachers all you want, and it's very important to have embodied human beings as your teachers so that you know what that energy looks like in a grounded, this is grounded ascension, right? It's like, what that ascended energy looks like in a grounded human being person who is also completely flawed. It's important to do that. Otherwise, you're just, there's a lot of backfiring that can happen if you don't have those teachers as a reference. Um, so, so in typical Lemurian fashion, the answer to your question is yes and no. And I think that's the biggest truth, is that, right now, here we are sitting on November 4th, the day after the quote unquote presidential election, waiting to know what is going to happen with our country. And this is one of the many initiations that this year has brought us into multidimensional reality. That it's like the biggest, like, a multidimensional reality is not like vibrating into a 5D consciousness and not having to eat and, like, only working with ascended master teachers and playing sound healing all day. Like, that is not what's up. Like, it's grounded ascension. And so, but it's like being able to be with the drama and the grief and the anxiety and the fearfulness, and also being able to be with the mystery, like right now, it's like we may not know who our president is for a long time. And we have to be functional in that mystery. And it's not to bypass it, but it's like we have to be in the both and. That linear third dimensional human mind wants it to be either or. We're like, what is it going to be? Like, who is it? Can I get back to work? Like, da da da. But it's like, this uncertainty that this year has brought us is really about this massive initiation into trust and into being at peace with the unknown and being at peace with things being undefined and not working the way. And, who knows when I'm going to get that package that I ordered a month ago. Like, so many unknowns. And it's like we have to be able to be in the anxiety, be in the grief, be in the pain, be in the suffering, and without bypassing it, to still show up and serve the people that we're meant to serve. Um, and to allow, right? Like, I support in, like, my coaching practice, I support people who do things, that business practices that I don't agree with, you know? And it's like, I'm not judging them, it's not something that's like, vehemently opposed to, like, the well-being of humanity, but it's just things that I don't do personally because it's not my preference. And but that's their preference and I support them, it's like to be in that allowance of, like, that it's okay that, like, multiple realities can exist in my sphere, and I engage with them at different levels, but I don't banish them, So it's like it's really all about boundaries, like, can you be this close, or no, this farther away, farther away, farther away, but you're still here, but you might be really far away. So that was a very multidimensional answer.
Yeah, and I think it's so funny. I have like a list of questions here, and I'm like, yeah, you just answered all of them, like right there, which is great. Because I wanted to, obviously, this is grounding ascension, and it's about how do we make this practical, right? And that's one of the things that I see when people approach me. It's like, Lemuria, and Like, what does that have to do with my life? You know? And that was a big question for me. I was like, okay, I'm getting all these downloads and visions. I don't care. Like, I don't know how to bring that into this reality, right? And I mean, even outside of Lemuria, like you're saying, like we are being trained right now in the entire world to understand how do we cope with the in between? How do we live in that almost multidimensional type of lifestyle, right? Where everything is happening and nothing is happening and everything's unstable, right? And the only stable place that we can be is inside, in ourselves, in our truth. And then also the fact that you always weave in, and I think it's so important, right? Just to be in this body and this life, and also be able to weave in our ability to do the work with real teachers, right? To actually be mentored in the correct way in the physical, to actually put in the time into education, and then also understand that it's our job to be in service and to create abundance and to be in our lives and to be in our bodies. That's one of the big things that I got from that course that you created in 24 hours. It was like, yeah, this is your responsibility, right? And that was one of the first times that kind of clicked, that I was like, ah, oh, yeah, she's like, you're right. And anytime I turn away from that, it's like, I'm not living up to my responsibility. And in this multi-dimensional state, sometimes your bank account reflects that, sometimes it doesn't. But it's so much trusting, especially this year, right? So, do you have any recommendations to anybody that is awakening to Lemuria, or just in general, like just awakening this year and like things are just up in the air, and just finding that security within and coming back to that responsibility of why we're here, what we're doing? How do we anchor into that? How do we move forward?
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. Well, I think it is really like so knowing that you do have lifetimes. And it's not true for everybody, okay? So we got to talk about that too, because there are some people who are new here. And there are some people who've also um and I feel like this is true for everybody who is new here, that, new on this planet Earth. There are some of us, for me, it's like, I know that I've been here for over 30,000 years. And so there are people who have maybe been here for, uh, 5,000 years, or which is still a long time, in human history. um, and maybe there are people who have been here for 500 years, or maybe there's people who are here for their first time. But I think it's also important to know that it's like, you weren't just like, I don't know. I mean, like, who knows what it's like, like maybe you were just like an embryo in the mind of God and you have no prior experience to this lifetime at all. But I know for me, it's like I have also had, like, yeah, I've been on this planet for 30,000 years, but I also have off-planet past life memories. So I have memories of being on other planets and other lifetimes, not even being human, like being biped, but not, or even being other creatures. And so it's to know that it's like the creative source has been here from the beginning of everything, which is farther than we can possibly imagine. And so, like, wherever you are in that stage, whether you have like multiple human lifetimes, or you're just coming here from another planet or another, galaxy, or but that it's like there you have experience that you can draw from. And um and that experience is not outside of you, that wisdom, that those gifts, maybe you were a healer or a shaman in Atlantis, and so deep within yourself some kind of healing technique that is working with crystals and light and sound and water, and you're meant to invent that in this life, and that will be the greatest thing you could ever do for everybody. um, and or that, you know, you're coming from another civilization where there was a different political format. And so you're here to bring change and reform into our government. You know, or like there's so many different ways that, you know, people can bring forth gifts. And so number one, it's like to be in the space of invitation, right? Because the earth plane is a place of free will. This is a free will planet. And so nobody, you know, it's like you have to choose. Like, you know, nobody can influence you without in some way your permission, you know, whether that permission is unconscious or conscious. Um, so, in order for anybody to help you or for wisdom to arise from your Akashic records, which is encoded into your DNA of all of these past life experience, past lives, and whatever kind of fashion that manifests as, that you have to give permission to your cells to release that. So, you know, it can be, you know, any kind of experience where you're just like, you know, before you go to sleep, to say like, you know, as I'm going to sleep tonight, I give permission to my cells to release to me um things that are I'm ready to learn, you know, things that would be the most beneficial, you know, wisdom, talents, gifts, healing abilities, insights, revelations that would be for my highest good and the highest good of all beings. I invite the release of that from my cells to me while I'm sleeping. um, and I invite the great teacher that I have, teachers that I have been in past lives, to be my teachers again for me in this form in my dreams. Um, but also to ground that into the earth, you know, to walk on the earth. To really, it's about listening. It's about a deep sense of presence in your physical body with the land that you find yourself on now. Because if you are on land right now that you don't feel like you should be on because you feel like you should move to Hawaii or whatever, it's like you have to complete with the land that you are on now because you're on that land for a reason. And even if you're moving, if you're on, you know, in the same state, it's like, God, when I moved from the place that I was before where I live now, I was crying because I had made flower essences from almost every one of those plants. And it wasn't because I wanted to, it was because they asked me to, like the plants. Like you have to be present with the plants, and you can ask the plants to be your teachers. You know, you can go outside and whatever tree is down the street from where you live in the city, you can go sit with that tree and be like, I am here, I am present, I am ready for you to be my teacher. And the tree, if you go often enough and say that intention enough, the tree will begin to be your teacher. And you'll begin through listening and sitting and being in presence and being in communion, you know, and the student does not talk over the teacher. The student has to listen. And the tree will be your teacher, and you will learn things from that tree that no other tree could teach you. And so it really is knowing that you have the capability to intentionally unlock wisdom within your own cells, and wisdom within the earth, and wisdom within the plants and the stones, and that can change your life, you know, with the water. You know, it's like you can wake up every morning and take a glass of water and say, you know, I love you, water. Thank you, water. I love you, water. Thank you, water. And water, I invite you to be my teacher today. You know, teach me about multidimensionality. Teach me about being solid, being a gas, being a liquid. Teach me how to flow with things. Teach me about all of the things that are encoded into you since you've been here witnessing from the very first land that arose from the ocean, you know? So like that, if you just did that practice and then you drank that water after, like, you say that prayer in the morning and you drink the water at night, it's like, if you did that for 20 days or 22 days, it's like your whole life would change.
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings us to the simplicity, right? There's so much power and so much wisdom and information in the simplicity and the simple things of life. And I think that's where the world is turning to these days, right? A lot of people have been forced to turn around and go to their backyards maybe for the first time. Like you said, you were brought to take your feet on the land. And it's like maybe there's people that never spent time in their backyard, right? And this is the first year that they did. So there's so much power in the simplicity and in the wisdom of nature, right? We feel that and we live that so deeply here in Hawaii. Yeah. Do you have
Yeah, it's like they say
any?
that,
Yeah.
oh, like the best place to hide something is in plain sight.
Yeah. Right. And here it is in our trees, in our water. Yeah. So beautiful. And I love how all of this is so related to bringing Lemurian wisdom into a daily practical part of our lifestyle. Um, can you talk a little bit about that? Just, yeah.
Um, well, I think it's really like it's really grounding in like what it is to engage with Lemurian energy on a day-to-day basis, because truly it's not some super galactic magical, I mean it is, but it's also like, like Lemuria was just this place where we lived in harmony and in unity with the land and with each other. And so yeah, it's like that can happen any day in every way, like in everything that you do. And like coming from a place of compassion, where it's like um but yeah, I think it really is. So I do a practice that is really honoring the elements every morning. And this was just, we had this altar sort of set up. When I said we, like when I lived with my previous partner, we had this altar in the kitchen. I really love having an altar in the kitchen. And not like off to the side, like on the counter. It's a sacrifice for your counter space, but I like it because then it's in my face. It's not like the altar that's over there in the sacred spot. It's like, no, it's here, and we're making toast and burning incense, and it's all happening. And so in my morning, it's like I wake up and I do different things, but I take my vitamins and drink my lemon water, and then I honor the elements and really it's through honoring the elements that you honor everything. So I'll start by just lighting a candle, and I'll say something like honoring, invoking, and inviting the element of fire. So I'm doing using my free will. I'm honoring, I'm invoking, and I'm inviting. So I'm, honoring, celebrating, invoking, and inviting the element of fire. And then I will probably go through, because I'm obsessed with astrology, and then I'll name all of the representatives of the element of fire through the signs and the planets that are connected to the fire element. And so then I'll say, I invite you to be my teachers. Thank you for being with me. And then, I go and I light a stick of incense and I say, same thing, but with the element of air. And then, and naming all of the representatives of the element of air, asking them to be my teachers, and, thanking them for being with me. Same thing with water. So I have water from the time that I did it before, but you could start with a clean glass. And so I say, like, pouring the water into the glass, honoring, invoking, and inviting the element of water, and then naming all of the representatives and putting that on the altar. And then I have a little jar of salt. I've done different things for the earth element. It's like I've also done, when I was drinking guayusa every day, I would take some of the guayusa from the bag and take it outside and put it on the earth. And then I started to do it with the matcha. Um, and so, but now I have very expensive ceremonial grade matcha. So, I mean, like, yeah, I don't think guys offended. So, but I take the salt. I have salt. And so it's nice salt, very nice salt. But I take that out there. I take that outside and I sprinkle that on the ground and, and really connect. Like, I feel so like I feel like I have a personal relationship with Gaia, with Aina. Like, we talk every day. And so it's so also too, even before this, it's like when I go outside to let my dog out to go to the bathroom, I go out and put my feet on the ground. And I say hello, I say good morning to all of my plants, but I put my feet on the ground and I say, good morning, Gaia, aloha aina. And I like wiggle my toes like I'm hugging. I'm like, hey, giving her a little back scratch. And I mean, like 99% of the time, the wind picks up, It's like it's a dialogue. Um, and so then when I'm going outside and I'm connecting to the element of earth, um, I name all of the representatives astrologically, but then I also really connect to Tierra Gaia herself, and I look out at the ocean and the mountains and the trees and the plants and everything around me, at the wind, and I'm just like, I am so glad to be on this planet with you. Like, thank you for teaching me about endless creation and about the necessary destruction. Thank you for teaching me about compost, Thank you for teaching me about interrelationship, about how the plants and the animals and everything all works together. Thank you for teaching me about mutations, and how things mutate and evolve over time. Um, but yeah, it's really, I used to be resistant to the earth. It felt too earthy. But I really feel like also the Pleiadian teachings that Barbara Marciniak brought through the Earth book, Earth, the Living Library, I feel like the teachings that she brought through them really makes Earth feel so galactic. Um, yeah, so there's more that I could say there, but it's just like, to, like, on a daily practice, to really be in, even if you're in, I lived in San Francisco for 10 years. So it's like there are still green spaces that you can go to. Again, it was like when I left San Francisco, I cried so hard because I lived many places while I was there, but the last place I lived was 4 blocks from the Presidio, where there was two willow trees that grew together, and this little stream that flowed through there, and this whole village of hummingbirds. And it's like, I think the last thing I'll say here is, on it, like, if you have places like that, even a park like that, um or even your tree, down the street or whatever, but to go there, it's like one of my friends says, the most powerful thing you can create with someone is history. And that's true with the earth. And so have those places that you go to when you're sad, and then you go to when you're scared, and you go to when you're happy, and you go to when you're ecstatic and so delighted, and go to those places when you're confused. And those places, like, the more you listen, the more you watch, the more you see, the more they teach you. And, like, really, this earth is a multi-dimensional galactic reality that is just right in front of us.
So good, so good. I love it. And thank you for sharing your morning ritual. I think, again, it brings us back to this power and simplicity, right? For so many years, I thought Lemuria is this out there thing, right? Like this thing that I have to get to, and I'm not there yet because I was living in New York or Miami, and it's like I'm never going to get there. And it's like, but it's inside you. It's nature, it's simplicity, and um, being able to do that. And it's so beautiful that you did it as a daily ritual to remind yourself to activate. That's so activating. It's so beautiful. And we can always do that, right? I could have done that in New York. I didn't realize that it's just a consciousness that we can all tap into. It doesn't matter where we are in the world. So thank you for that. Well, I think that it's time to wrap up. I know that you're an astrologer, so if you can, for just a few minutes, um, can you share anything about how this year is wrapping up? What 2021 maybe, or the beginning? Let's just keep it really short term. Um, what's it feeling like for you in regards to the awakening, or just moving forward as a humanity, or just any words on that?
I feel like that's a whole nother podcast in and of itself.
Oh, sorry. Maybe just like super simple. You choose what you want to answer.
I mean, it's like, so the big event for this year is the Titans, Saturn and Jupiter walking into Aquarius. Um, and so, really it's like that's, the beginning of the age of Aquarius is having, they're not going to be, so Saturn is going to be in Aquarius for 2.5 years. Jupiter will be there for 1 year. Um, and then ultimately farther down the road, Pluto is going to go into Aquarius. That's going to change everything. So I think it's really like there's a lot, there's like Mars completing his retrograde, and there's a lot of different things that are happening. But I think really it's like the lesson is that there's no normal that we're going back to, and because the normal that we knew before was us relying on the outside world to validate us, to to take care of us. We were relying on like things outside of ourselves to take care of ourselves, and that a lot of it is really like really taking responsibility, for ourselves and for each other. It's like not relying on these big systems, and that we're really here like when Saturn and Jupiter go into Aquarius. It's that is going to be like the revolutionizing of the systems and the structures that support all of us. um so yeah, I feel like that. I just feel like that's a whole nother conversation. It's just like, yeah, I feel like the basically the thing is that, this whole year is an initiation to really trusting ourselves, and really resourcing our communities, like those people who are our neighbors and our friends that are in our local vicinity. um, and to also, of course, building, more of our communities online, but really like really taking care of each other, and yeah, really opening up to the expansion of the revolutionary consciousness that is like that, like that's rising within all of us. And that, like, when Saturn goes into Aquarius, we're going to build different systems. We're going to build systems that will benefit the collective instead of a few, and that will benefit the earth. And yeah, that the change isn't stopping. That with those planets going into the sign of revolutionary change and innovative solutions that benefit the whole, that's just what it's going to be.
Thank you. Yeah, that's such a perfect answer, to know really that there is no going back. There's no going back. It's time for us to take our responsibility, whatever that means for all of us, right? To remember to become the light workers, to just show up to a whole new life, to go through this death and rebirth process, whatever and wherever we are in that process. It's just time. It's time. So I think we're complete. I just want to say thank you for your time. You're such a beautiful light, and it's so inspiring. All of the work that you do. I will add in your links to anybody. You teach all of this stuff that we've talked about today: astrology and sound healing, and just so many beautiful things. So I will add all of your links. And do you have any final words that you like to share?
I just really want to thank everyone for listening and for listening to the whole thing. If you're still listening here. And yeah, just to allow, I always think that there's a lot when we have conversations like this that are maybe like really far out for some people. Um, to just let it wash over you. And if you don't understand everything that we talked about today, that's okay. That there is a lot of energy and I always say too that it's like, we think sound healing is crystal singing bowls and gongs and all that stuff, but it really is also the sound healing attunements that we get from receiving the energetic activations of spoken words. And said that there are words that we spoke today that sounded like words you've heard before, but the way that they were said, it was actually sound healing. And so just to really be open to integrating all of the different energies that were shared today and to drink a lot of water. Get your feet on the earth if you can. And yeah, to allow yourself to move forward as soon as you take off your headphones or turn off your car and stop listening to this podcast, to let yourself be different, to let yourself be changed, to even let yourself be healed by some of the things that we shared today, and to really open up to that possibility that the world really is a magical, magical, mysterious, amazing place, and that something as simple as a podcast could actually change your life.
Oof, powerful. So good. Such a perfect way to end. Well, thank you so much, Raquel. I really enjoyed our time together, our conversation. And thank you to all of our listeners. And we will see you next time. Mahalo.
Thank you so much. Aloha.